Welcome back. It's time for Chapter 12. In this chapter, we're going to be discussing basically health psychology concepts with regard to personality. So how we handle stress, how we adjust to different life scenarios that could be health related, and then also how we engage in health behaviors and make decisions about our own health. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Let's begin with a nice little survey so we can kind of see how we think about these issues beforehand. So here's your rating scale. It's going to range from 0, which means never, to 4, which means fairly often. The middle place is the number 2, and that means that it's sometimes. If you do it less than sometimes, go with a 1. If you do it more than sometimes, give it a 3. Sometimes the labeling on these Likert type scales are a little weird, but try and go along using something between 0 and 4, and neutral would be in the 2 position. All right, so how often have you, number 1, been upset because of something that happened unexpectedly? So you're never upset by it would be a 0. You are very often upset by something that happens unexpectedly would be a 4. Sometimes is considered the neutral position. So try and find a number that sort of represents how often you become upset because of something that happened unexpectedly. Number 2, how often have you felt that you were unable to control the important things in your life? I'm going to kind of take a pause in case you want to stop me between each question, but let you just sort of go if you're going along and just giving numbers. All right. 3, how often have you felt nervous and quote-unquote stressed? Number 4, how often have you felt confident about your ability to handle your personal problems? Number 5, how often have you felt that things were going your way? Number 6, how often have you been able to control irritations in your life? 7, how often have you found that you could not cope with all the things that you had to do? I apologize for the typo, that's all me. Number 8, how often have you felt that you were on top of things? Number 9, how often have you been angered because things that were outside of your control? So it looks like I left out an of in that one. So how often have you been angered because of things that were outside of your control? I am quite the typist. Number 10, how often have you felt difficulties were piling up so high that you could not overcome them? All right, now to score it, now by the way, pause if you need to, but to score your scale, the first thing you're going to need to do is reverse the ratings that you gave to 4, 5, 6, and 8. So as in the case in the past when we've done this, what I mean by reversing your items is you're literally going to change the score that you gave, and this is the new number that you're going to use as your score for the item. So if you originally gave it a 4, change it to a 0. If you gave it a 3, change it to a 1. 2s stay the same. If you gave it a 1, change it to a 3, and if you gave it a 0, change it to a 4. So literally change those numbers. Those are going to be the scores for these items now. All right, once you've completed the reversing of those 4 items, you're going to add up your score across all 10 items. So using those changed numbers for 4, 5, 6, and 8, and the number that you had originally given for the remaining items, sum those all up for all 10, and you will get your total score on the scale. So now that hopefully you've done that, maybe you paused me because you needed to do some addition, you're back, you want to see how did you do compared to sort of other people. Let's first break it down by age. So people between the age of 18 and 29, their average score was 14.2 in the original research that validated this scale. 30 to 44, their score was 13. 45 to 54, 12.6. You notice this number is going down. 55 to 64, 11.9. 65 and over, it's a little bit higher, but I mean really not noticeably higher than the 55 to 64-year-olds because they're at 12. So what you see is from the age of 18 to the age of 65, our score kind of goes down. So we have fewer of the very often responses across these items. The reason why you had to reverse items 4, 5, 6, and 8 is because they were phrased in such a way that if you said very often to them, you were saying the opposite of what the scale is really designed to do. So that's why you have to flip those items. And so when I say that, more people between 18 and 29 gave very often as a response than people who were, over 55 years of age, what you're looking at is people starting to say fairly often as their top score rather than very often as their top score. If you break it down by sex, you see that men are have lower scores than women on this scale, and so you see that women probably say very often, more often than men do. And the marital status, you see that if you have people who are widowed or if they are married and living with someone, they give lower scores on this scale than people who are single or never wed or divorced. Those two are pretty close to each other, and then separated, so they haven't completed the process of divorce. They may still be, planning to get back with their mate or whatever. They tend to give the highest scores. So you see differences based on marital status as well. So what we're kind of tapping into is how much a person sort of perceives or gets distressed by their perception of having control over the situation, finding themselves in situations that elicit stress responses, things like that. And so what we're finding is that people who are younger, women on average, and then people who are either widowed or married and living with somebody tend to have, sorry, I mixed those up. The younger people, yeah, women, I was right on the women's side. I got lost in the marital status. So people who are the youngest, the ones who are female, the ones who are single and never wed, divorced, or separated, they tend to have more situations that they describe as, making them feel nervous and stressed, or feeling that things were not going to go their way, or being able to control irritations, right? Those kinds of things. We see a difference based on age, and we see a difference based on sex, and we see a difference based on marital status. All right. Well, let's jump into stress. I'm feeling a little stressed because I just messed up my description of that thing, but that's okay. I'm going to get over it, right? So what? Giving the wrong answer, finding typos in your scale that you're reading aloud on the internet. These might be perceived as what we call stressors. These are factors that can lead a person to have a reaction. So a stressor would be something like, okay, maybe my typo doesn't really count as a stressor that well, because they would be things like explosions are stressors. Poverty is a stressor. Flying on a plane or living near an airport where you have to hear planes all the time can be stressors. The reason why living near an airport would be stressful is because loud noises are perceived as stressful. So, explosions have not only a loud noise, but also the unpredictability of, what's going on. So, there's multiple layers on an explosion. There's multiple layers on a plane. Why these would be stressors. Part of it would be the loud noises part. Being in extreme cold, being unable to, get warm or get out of the cold. So really, these are all just sort of examples of things that could be construed as stressors. A lot of what determines whether something is a stressor or not, though, is one's appraisal of the event. For some people, the things on the list here are all stressors. For some people who are listening right now, one or two of them might be perceived as stressors, and the others might be perceived as, exhilarating or liberating. Like when I show a picture of a plane, for those of you who are scared to fly, it's probably more of a stressor. For those of you who associate planes with like getting to go on vacation or out of your normal routine, you might perceive it as not a stressor, and in fact maybe something that is very positive. So it's all in one's appraisal. Right? So how you view the thing determines whether it's a stressor or not. So I'm going to lower my volume a little bit because I keep hitting the red line. I felt like my last videos were too quiet, so then I jacked it up, so now I might be yelling at you, so I apologize. So a stressor is an event that might elicit a stress reaction from a person, right? So a lot of times we call, in our layperson terms, we'll call a stressor, we'll call like I got into a car accident and that was stressful, right? I really want to kind of pull apart the language so that we are really clear that when we say the word stressor, it's an event that can lead to, in us, a stress reaction. So a car accident would be a stressor, and then our stress reaction would be in response to that stressor. And so somebody drew this cartoon, and it has all the labels of the things that our body does when it's undergoing stress. So I pulled that off the internet. Thank you, whichever artist drew that. I see a signature at the bottom, so hats off to you, F. Hodges. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about appraisal, choosing how to view a situation. So that phrasing right there, the choosing part, is kind of in the eye of the theorist. For some people, the process of appraisal is thought to be more involuntary. So, you do automatic appraisals. Other theorists look at a lot more like you choose how to view a situation. So let's take that second one as our first explanation here and talk about choosing how to view a situation. All right, so let's say that you have a stressful event that you have to do called taking a tough math test. Some of you may actually be in this situation, taking a math class and you have to take a test. And this can be stressful, right? Any type of test can be stressful, right? A lot of people think that they're unusual by having test anxiety, but that's really common for a lot of people to be nervous when taking a test. So any kind of test might be a stressful event for you. If you appraise it like it's a threat, oh no, this is beyond me. I'm going to fail. I don't know math. I'm not good at this. If you appraise it like that, you're more likely to have a stress reaction that is, going to lead you to the point of actually performing worse than you would have otherwise, right? Like it is going to interfere with your top performance. So if you see it as a threat, then you're more likely to have negative stress. If, on the other hand, you view it as a challenge, right? Like, okay, this is my chance to show that I really encoded this and I really know this and I'm ready to move to the next class, or that I never have to take math again the whole time I'm in college, whatever it is. If you look at it like a challenge, the stress response is more likely to help you to be aroused so that then you can be focused. And in biological terms or psychological terms, when we use the word aroused in this kind of context, we're talking about, your heart rate is at, elevated, but in this case, elevated to the point where it's helpful, not harmful. It actually makes you focus more. So arousal is looked at as like a psychological state rather than, a sexual term in this context. So let's talk a little bit about catastrophic events as stressors. I already mentioned like explosions, things like that, but how about earthquakes, fires? Major life events can be very stressful, like the death of a loved one, or graduation is a great example of a major life event that can be very stressful. You look forward to it. You're sitting in a college class right now and you're like, I can't wait for that major life event to occur when I'm done going to school. But of course, as you leave school, a new set of stressors descends upon you as you are attempting to find a job that's, aligned with your major, or you're trying, you've completed one degree, your AA, and now you're moving on to a bachelor's degree. And so you have to do your upper division work, or you're graduating with your BA and you're ready to move on to grad school. I mean, there's always a transition. Like you close the chapter on one thing and then now you're starting a new thing, and there's new things can always be stressful. Here's another example of something that people tend to think about as a happy event, in all the fairy tales, and they lived happily ever after. But, honestly, getting married or moving in with your romantic partner or any of these things that you've looked forward to and you really want to happen, now you have to adjust, and that's stressful. Right? There's always change that is involved with major life events. Same thing with the birth of a baby. It seems like a happy event, but that little baby is going to bring all sorts of chaos. It's going to be all sorts of things that change as a result, and that's going to be stressful. And then there are daily hassles that can be stressful. Just everyday things that, we have this mom on the left who she looks like she's picking up her baby from daycare, had to stop at the grocery store, has worked all day. Just these little daily hassles of keeping up the schedule, keeping, all the balls in the air. On the right, we have a person who's at work and experiencing the daily hassle of it just never seems to end. She's buried by her inbox, right? So standing in line is a good example of a daily hassle, or traffic is a good example of a daily hassle. So we are designed, our bodies are designed to respond to catastrophic events really well. We are not really well designed to, adjust to major life events on our own, or to accumulate daily hassles day after day after day. They just keep piling on. Our stress response system is not really designed for that. So what I want to do in the next segment is talk about our stress response system and what it was set up for and how it optimally functions, and then how it may make us ill if we're not using it, as designed. So I'll see you in the next segment.